Have you ever played a game where nothing ever seems to happen? A game where the plot moves so slowly you barely know it's there at all? Well, with Z Continuum, that's exactly what you get. But before we get to the Continuum, what is Z? Back in 2009, that's exactly what the community within PlayStation Home had to find out when strange things started happening within the game, including several teaser videos appearing around the main home square area showing a huge metal door and graffiti of the Z logo. In some of the videos, a person could be seen running into what looked like a teleporter and appearing in the real world, plus what appeared to be a small blue smiling robot which would later become known as Stapler. Z is described as an alternate reality game, created by Dreams, which mixed virtual in-game events and puzzles with events that happen in the real world at the same time. It ran for 12 weeks, and players from across the globe had to come together to find clues in the real world which could help them solve puzzles within the game, and at the same time, puzzles within the game could lead them to places and websites outside the game and back again. When Z officially opened, people were transported to a new area called the Alpha AFK Hub, which was supposedly a beta area for PlayStation Home before it eventually found its way to everyone else. In the hub, we could attempt to solve puzzles, games and quizzes, and be rewarded with fragments or butterflies, which in turn could unlock more of the Z mystery. At the far end of the hub was a large metal door covered in what appears to be binary code and displaying the Z logo. It wasn't long though before a woman named Jess appeared in a new video. Her avatar runs through the open Z door only to appear in reality, and tells us that the boundaries between the real and virtual worlds are blurring, and that we have to try to find her. In each video that Jess appears in, there are subtle clues and puzzles that we have to solve, including following her footsteps to find something, figuring out the meaning of musical notes on her shirt, finding hidden images at the end of a video, and much more. As we follow the puzzles and clues, we were led to many new areas, including Alpha Zone 1, 2 and 3, a maintenance area where we had to disguise our avatar, and even Jess's apartment where a huge party was going on, and we got another musical clue in the form of a song. We were eventually introduced to a company known as Veil Corp who claimed that Jess was working for them and that Z was their property, but we later found out that this is not the case. As the weeks went on, we continued to follow the clues until we eventually found the code to unlock the mysterious Z door. Once through, we were presented with one final choice: to release Z or destroy it. We had to pull the information together that we had gathered over the past 12 weeks to decide the best course of action. And even though what Z was changed depending on our choice, it resulted in the same outcome, the world being driven into chaos only to be reborn as something more simple and peaceful. However, after we made our choice, the input console moved aside and we continued forward to a big, bright, shining room with Jess at the other end. She told us that what we had just seen was fake, and that the previous 12 weeks of puzzle solving was merely a recruitment exercise designed to bring people here, and that we would be needed again for something in the future. Before disappearing, she told us that she would be in touch. The original Z was such a big hit that people still talk about it today, and of course, because of its huge popularity, the fans were screaming for a sequel. It wasn't until at least 3 years later that signs of a sequel started to emerge. And where do I start with this one? It's almost like they gave the task of creating the game to a new guy who was just starting out in the business, and then realised he was in way over his head and slapped together a bunch of minigame ideas that were laying around. It started off with a great build-up like the original. More strange events and videos started appearing around PlayStation home spaces, such as an obviously fake score in the Orb Runner minigame by someone known as EFD. A statue of the Z character Stapler was vandalised, then a huge version of a vandalised Stapler suddenly appeared in the Dreams store as if it were trying to break out from the ground and try to escape. There were several videos showing a hole briefly opening to a new place, before the videos quickly severed. We saw videos of what could be our new foe, a woman in a dark hood hanging around various home spaces which had been set on fire, and shockingly enough, the Z Hub, which was now known as the Z Museum, had also been set on fire. Strange boxes began appearing and slowly started to build themselves up bigger each week, as well as other clues and puzzles. We eventually started to see trailers, and I honestly think these trailers were more exciting than the game itself. It showed lots of action, strange characters, a large city, things falling down from the sky, and it was all accompanied by big dramatic music. We were told that the security behind Z had been compromised by someone known as Eat Flaming Death, or EFD for short, and that Jess, who works for a group called Axiom, had tracked her down to a hidden part of home known as the Continuum. It was now up to us to follow her into the Continuum and stop her before she causes even more trouble. When we first entered the Continuum via the back door, we were quickly in trouble. EFD destroyed the tunnel we were using to land safely, and we ended up free-falling out of control to a place known as the Junkyard. We chased EFD through a warehouse, solving a simple search and find puzzle as we went, but EFD managed to escape. From here on, the game quickly went downhill. Jess guided us to our apartment, which was located on the side of a huge skyscraper. And to be honest, The apartment's ugly as hell. The main area wasn't too bad. It was a large open space with a video screen and a computer known as a holopad at one end. As we progressed through the game, we unlocked more areas of the apartment, which looks like a jumbled mess. A series of corridors and dark, broken, gloomy areas scattered around which represent various areas of the Continuum itself. It takes so long to just run from one end of the apartment to the opposite end that I can't see too many people bothering with half of it. Instead, they'll just stick to the main area closest to the entrance. But back in the game, we were given an introduction to some of the basic missions. And get used to these missions because they're pretty much the only ones we'll see, besides a couple that were introduced later. The first mission was a tracker mission, where we have to search around the Continuum for a specific target. However, these targets show off a huge pillar of bright light which can be seen from almost anywhere, making the target easier to find, so there's little challenge to any of the tracker missions at all. Next came the combat missions, which turn out to just be a simple card game where the players select characters in terms of strength, intelligence, stealth, etc., depending on what statistic is called for. Then they take turns to select one of 3 attacks until the opponent's health is reduced to 0. And each player gets a series of attribute cards, which can be used to raise or lower strength, skip opponents' turns, and much more. The card game seemed fun at first, but it quickly became dull after it became apparent that this was all we were going to get whenever someone started a fight. New story content was unlocked day by day, and this is where the most boring part of the game comes in. At the start of each day we have to check our holo mail for the latest developments, and most of the days, that's all we did. Check the emails, task complete, spend time relaxing until the next day. All we did was read email after email after email, occasionally broke up with more tracker or combat missions. And when we did get a different mission, it was a simple slide puzzle where we had to guide a small dot through a series of holes in walls as they moved towards us. As far as I can tell, there was only one real challenge out of all of the puzzles, an IP address puzzle where we had to find a bunch of IP numbers with almost no clues or instructions whatsoever, and enter them into a series of text boxes. I don't think anyone really figured out how to get these numbers, and a bunch of people just resorted to typing in 1, enter, wrong, 2, enter, wrong, 3, enter, wrong, and so on until they eventually found the correct number. Everyone else simply waited until those people found the answers and posted them on message boards. The story is something that I just can't seem to take seriously. We're supposed to be working for some kind of super secret organisation, but they just act like a bunch of kids, resorting to simple immature name-calling most of the time, describing their enemies as a bunch of geeks, and including strange out-of-place jokes in their holomail messages. The entire story of Z Continuum can easily be summed up in a few sentences. The Continuum is going to be blown up with a huge bomb. No it isn't. There's another bomb. We've disarmed it. There's another bomb now. Now there's 3 bombs. We've stopped those 2, now there's another bomb. They use the same plot device over and over and over and over and over again. More times than I'd like to imagine. After the first few times, people on message boards were saying, "I don't care anymore, just give me the bomb and I'll destroy the Continuum myself." The strange thing though is that this part of the plot all started with the organisation you're working for, Axiom. After a few days of being in the Continuum, they send you a message saying this place could be dangerous, we're going to destroy it, and probably why you're still there. Why are we working for these guys again? But then, a few days later, they say they found some hidden words in pieces of code scattered around the area. These words being love and creation. For some reason, this is enough to make Axiom change their mind about destroying the place, even though the supposed threat they're worried about is still there. What's more though, is that the whole story doesn't feel like you're actually needed. You're mainly sent on simple missions where you find out some huge problem, and a bunch of NPC characters behind the scenes do all the work to solve it, leaving you to take the final step by entering a code or playing one of the 3 minigames. If our character had never set foot in the Continuum, I honestly think it wouldn't have made much of a difference. Beyond this subpar story, there was also an optional side quest, where each day you had to search the world for pieces of scattered code called the Quinta Essentia, which contained words which when brought together talked about the origin of the Continuum, where it came from and what it was designed for. This side quest was later rendered completely pointless, because everything in the code you've been searching for is explained to you through the regular holomail dialogue. In one piece of mail they openly say, why not continue to collect the words from the Quinta Essentia? We know it's dull and pointless now, but unusual pleasure can be gained from daily repetition of the dull and pointless process. Though they may have said the whole thing was pointless because they were worried about the Continuum being blown up from yet another bomb which they were trying to stop. However, towards the end of the game, things did become interesting for just a few days. They introduced a new puzzle, which like the original Z, mixed virtual and real-world content. One of the enemies which Axiom wanted to question had been kidnapped in the real world, and had the massive amount of luck to find a PS3 where he had been taken. He logged into PlayStation Network and sent a message describing where he was when he had been kidnapped, what he heard while he was inside the trunk of the kidnapper's car, and how long it took him to get where he was being held. We had to use the information provided and search through online maps to find out where he was, and later use clues to narrow down the location. I only have one problem with this puzzle. If people get stuck, they were told to click a box for a clue, but the clue pretty much just told you the exact answer instead of giving you a hint. One clue simply told us the answer was southeast in French. Even if you don't know French, you can just go to Google Translate and it will give you the answer. If the story wasn't bad enough, the game was glitched like crazy. Within the first few days, people found walls to walk through. There was invisible floors, corridors blocked by invisible walls, stat counters were constantly inaccurate, quintessential fragments that you had already collected kept reappearing over and over again, then disappeared from your stats, so you never really knew how many you had, and who knows what else there was. To sum it up, the whole thing feels like very little effort had gone into it, and that it may have just been rushed out to please the fans who had fond memories of the original Z. But what actually happened was it put people off any future Z projects. I read many posts of people saying they would rather have not have paid, because it just wasn't worth it, and others saying there was little hope for any future instalments, and they'd rather wait for other people's reviews before deciding to try it for themselves. Endreams may have wanted to put out a decent gaming experience, but unfortunately, this time round, they failed hard. Perhaps it would be a good idea to spend more time putting together interesting puzzles for the next instalment, or scrap it altogether and find a way to let people restart the original Z from the beginning, so new users can experience what everyone else enjoyed the first time around, and the older users could relive their old memories.